Let me know you can all hear me this morning. Everyone hear me loud and clear? Because what I don't want is me being muted, me being disappearing off the video without anyone knowing where I'm going. So yeah, let me know that you can all hear me. Good stuff. Okay, Phil, thanks for that. Right, guys. Okay, I'm going to start with a bit of Bible this morning. Okay, and then we're going to get into something this morning, and I had to put this verse up this morning because I woke up in bad old form this morning, and you'll find out why. I'm sure most of you will know why. If you live in Northern Ireland, you'll definitely know why. But I am not a happy bunny this morning. Okay, and I'm gonna dedicate and to everybody that's in England and Scotland and Wales and all over the world that doesn't know much about Northern Ireland and what happened during the Troubles. Bear with me this morning because you will get an education. But as well as that, it's what happened in Northern Ireland is very relevant to what's happening in the country generally, in the area of patriotism and treason. And I believe our government is a treasonous, evil, demonic government. And I believe Blair and Starmer have been in this since the beginning of the so-called peace process, which really has turned out to be an absolute demonization process of the British military. And again, let's not let the rewriting of history go on. The IRA and the Republican movement in general, as a nationalist said many years ago, a nationalist politician said many years ago, they were full of touts and louts. They weren't the heroic freedom fighters they try and make out. So many of them. In fact, so many of them were informants. When the Castlereagh break-in happened, there wasn't anybody left to shoot the informants. Let's just put it that way. Okay, touts and louts. Friend of mine lives in Belfast. I'm not going to name him. Has spent a lot of time exposing all this. Obviously, he's at great risk for doing that, and he has been attacked recently. So I'm not going to put a spotlight on him. But the truth is that this is where the rot started with the so-called peace process in Northern Ireland. But we're going to talk about that in a minute. And again, I know a lot of people, you may have a different opinion on this. I lived through it. Farty Pants lived through it. A lot of the other people in the comments in Northern Ireland lived through it. So just bear with us today. Bear with us today because it's a serious thing that we're going to look at and serious issues. So, but I want to start off by giving thanks because we do have a level of peace. It's not the peace that we would have all wanted. We would have wanted a peace where terrorists had been completely and utterly routed by the state forces. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. We are where we are. But what is happening now is beyond evil, what this British government is doing. But anyway, let's just read this Bible verse because I want to focus on the Word of God before we focus on the whatever they're calling this bill, the legacy bill mark 153, because this has been batted backwards and forwards for the last 30 years. Anyway, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. However angry I am about the British government, however angry I am about the rewriting of history, however angry I am about Republicans and Hamas terrorists been deified and sanctified by the mainstream media, by the evil left. I want to tell you something this morning, guys. I'm angry this morning. The left are evil. Irish Republicans are evil. The terrorists that murdered thousands of people in Northern Ireland are evil. Not was evil, they are evil because none of them have repented. Certainly not on the IRA side. And for those of us that went through that, for those of us, people say to me when I started doing the activism and talking about Islam and talking about what was going on in England, people say, "Oh, you're not scared, you're not worried." I checked under my car for 30 years. So I'm not worried or scared of anybody or anything. That's just the way it is. I do not care. You take your precautions, you roll the dice, and if you get away with it, you get away with it. That's the way it is. But not just me, hundreds of thousands of soldiers went through Northern Ireland. Tens of thousands of policemen went through the Northern Ireland Troubles. And many of us that live here still take security precautions, checking under your car, being aware of what's around you, being aware there's still areas of Northern Ireland I wouldn't go into because it would be a risk. Probably not shooting, but certainly of violence against the person. That's the reality of the situation. And these people are still out there. They're still out there. And as Gerry Adams famously or infamously said, they haven't gone away. Anyway, I'm going to dive into this really quickly because I've got a lot of videos to show you this morning. If you're in England or if you don't agree with what I'm saying, and I know obviously there are a lot of Irish nationalists who support us when it comes to what we're doing on Islam, okay? And you may not agree with what I'm saying, okay? I am not going to get into a row with anybody today. I'm not going to get upset with anybody today. I have what I believe is the true analysis of what happened. I lived through it. I've studied it along with many other people. It's what formed me as a young soldier. I came to this country when I was 18 years old in 1987. So now you all know how old I am, and this is what made me the person I am. Serving in Northern Ireland and living in Northern Ireland as an off-duty soldier and and then as a civilian. So the reality is, and I know there's other people in this chat that know this experience as well and know exactly what happened. But I want to show you some videos to hopefully try and give you a feel for what happened. Now, basically, the reason I'm angry, people are asking why I'm angry. There's a new legacy bill just gone through Parliament, okay, and it has once again removed immunity for prosecution for veterans that served in the Troubles. And I can say thankfully, I didn't shoot anyone during my tours of duty in Northern Ireland. I could have done, but didn't. I think 3 occasions by the yellow card, possibly 4 occasions, but certainly 3, I could have opened fire on terrorists and didn't because the window to shoot at those terrorists was too narrow and they were too far away. And we knew even then that if we'd shot a terrorist that was 300 meters away, by the time we got to him, the weapon would have gone and the balaclava would have gone. And we had these incidents. Again, I was involved in 3 occasions where that happened. One of them was a guy that was shooting with a shotgun, and we thought we were under fire, and we were very close to shooting them. Another one was a guy at Kelly's Corner in Belfast, ran across Kelly's Corner with a balaclava and a combat jacket and a G3 rifle. And again, if we'd have opened fire on that man, we would have probably been in these prosecutions now. So thankfully we didn't. And the other one was again just a fleeting view of a man with a weapon, just not enough time to respond safely. When you're in there's a crowded civil disturbance environment, you can't safely open fire on that individual without chance of hitting civilians. Or again, once you've shot the man, the weapon's disappeared, and you've shot an innocent man. So for me, this is not theoretical. For me, this is factual. Okay, and anyway, let's. I want to show you some videos that hopefully will give you a feel for what was going on in Northern Ireland at the time of these so-called murders by the security forces. There was no murders when I was serving in Northern Ireland. There were incidents where the IRA were going to assassinate members of the security forces, off-duty members of the security forces, civilians, and instead of meeting with some off-duty soldier who wasn't ready for them, they met with an SAS unit who got engaged in a firefight with them and killed the enemy, which is what happens in a conflict. So again, okay, let's play some of these videos. So this is probably one of the most shocking events that happened in Northern Ireland. Now I'm going to give a monologue as to what's happening here. So this was a funeral of an IRA. I think it was Kevin McCracken's funeral. I could be wrong. So if I'm wrong about that, just correct me if anybody knows the names of the IRA men that was getting buried here, right? So this is an IRA funeral in West Belfast. Couple of points on this. I was on leave when this happened. I was on leave, but I was living in Northern Ireland. So sorry, I was staying in Northern Ireland. I was staying with my future wife, and basically one of the companies from my regiment was on the ground with the RUC when this was happening. When this happened, my regiment were 300 meters away from where this incident happened, and the police would not allow them to go in and intervene. Why? And this is what we were told at the time. Now, whether this is true or not, I don't know. This is what I was told by soldiers that were on the ground. Now, again, a lot of these things, it's in the mists of history. But what I was told was they were told not to intervene, even though there was violence going on against these individuals in the car, because they thought the men in this car were loyalist paramilitaries. That's what I was told at the time. I don't know if that's true or not. Anyway, we'll continue to play it. So basically, what this was two soldiers from a signals unit who, I don't exactly know what they were doing, but as far as I know, they were not special forces guys. They were in plain clothes. They weren't special forces. They used to drive around and fix signals problems in the security force bases. That's what I was told. They went, by all accounts, it seems they went to have a look at this funeral. Very, very stupid thing to do. Very foolhardy. I'm not attacking the soldiers. What happened to them, they certainly should not have happened to them. But again, they certainly shouldn't have been in that situation. They weren't SAS. They weren't, as far as I know, they weren't SAS. They weren't 14 Intelligence Company or even the special signals units that used to work in Northern Ireland. They were guys that were in the wrong place at the wrong time. But look at what this crowd did. So basically, they gathered around the car. Now you can't hear it there because there's gunshots going off. One of the soldiers pulled out his pistol. That's that guy there getting jumped on is one of the soldiers getting out of his car. This is one of the most disturbing things that happened during the Troubles. Like I say, soldiers from my regiment were on the ground. I was on leave, staying in Northern Ireland at the time, so I saw this. I don't think it came through live, but we saw it pretty much as you're seeing it now on the news. I think it broke at about lunchtime on the day of the thing, and I was watching it in my wife's mother's house. They grabbed the soldiers out of the car, they beat them mercilessly, and then they took them to, I think, Casement Park, and they were shot in the head at the back of Casement Park. The IRA knew they were soldiers. They had their ID cards, and that was enough to sentence them to death. So that should give some context as to the brutality of what was going on in Northern Ireland at the time. Now, again, I'm going to try and be as fair as I possibly can in everything I say here, right? So this happened after Michael Stone hit the Milltown Cemetery and killed, I think, 3 people. One of them was an IRA man, and I think this was the IRA man that was killed in Milltown Cemetery by Michael Stone. So you could say, well, of course, the crowd were thinking it was a loyalist attack, and I'm sure most of the crowd did think that. But the men that shot those soldiers, they knew exactly who they were shooting. They knew they were undercover, not undercover. They were British soldiers, and they shot them in the head. They murdered them. And of course, people did go to prison, etc. Yeah, fair enough. But the reality is, a lot of people that were involved in that didn't go to prison. A lot of people involved in that were informants for the state, and that's probably why they didn't go to prison. So let's just talk about how dirty this war was. And the Republican movement has no room to claim any moral authority over what happened in the Troubles in Northern Ireland. I'm going to play another bit of footage here. Just bear with me.
The off-duty UDR man was repairing a friend's van in Hallidays Road near the North Belfast Peace Line when the 2 gunmen arrived on the scene. However, they did not attack immediately, but waited until the part-time soldier stopped for a break and walked down an entry to his friend's house. The gunmen followed him down the entry and forced their way into the kitchen of the house. They fired a number of shots, hitting the UDR man in the head. He died instantly. After the shooting, they left the house and, according to police, walked across Duncairn Gardens to the Nationalist New Lodge area. It's believed the gunman may have been watching the part-time soldier since earlier in the day. Neighbours at the scene this afternoon were shocked by the killing.
Anybody can come in from the far side and shoot anybody dead in a working kitchen. It's trying to earn a living, an innocent fella. It's just hatred, that's it.
The tension along the peace line was reflected this afternoon on the Loyalist Shankill Road, when local women protested about what they say is a lack of security in the area. Midway through the protest, a group of gunmen appeared and said they would take unspecified action if security was not improved. They threatened a camera crew and then ran down an alleyway and made their escape.
So again, just to give some context, this guy was a part-time soldier serving his country, protecting his community, totally legally, totally legitimately. He was working on a vehicle, went for a break, went for his lunch at his mate's house, and terrorists forced their way into a house and shot him in the head. Now, I want you to just think about the brutality of that. And now I'm going to play you some of the incidents that happened. In fact, there's one more I want to play to you. And this one is, and I had a friend who lost people in this attack. But this is about an incident that happened between Downpatrick and Ballykinler. And I believe one of the IRA men that was involved in this massacre was killed by an undercover police unit. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's the case. So I'm just going to play this one as well.
It had been a carefully planned attack, and one for which the IRA gang which carried it out would have lain in wait. The two Land Rover patrol with 4 soldiers in each vehicle had earlier left Ballykinler UDR base en route to Downpatrick. The men did not patrol at a regular time each day. As they approached Downpatrick and within a few miles of the town, there was a massive explosion detonated by command wire from a hill overlooking the scene. The second of the Land Rovers took the full force of the blast, which also blew a huge crater in the road. The 4 soldiers in it died instantly. The leading vehicle was blown into a field, but the 4 occupants were not seriously hurt. 2 cars being driven along the road at the time were damaged, and 1 civilian suffered cuts and bruises. Wreckage was strewn over a wide area, and police and forensic experts spent most of the day examining the scene. The police later examined a red motorcycle at the Flying Horse Estate in Downpatrick. They said that it may have been used in the attack. One of the first to visit the scene was the commander of the UDR, Brigadier Charles Ritchie.
But I'm sure you'll all appreciate that having just come back from visiting the scene of a mass murder which took place this morning, my thoughts at this time are very much and exclusively for.
And again, those soldiers would have they were UDR men. I think they were full time. UDR men. They were soldiers who were from the local community, and again, the UDR was demonized by Republicans very, very unfairly. The reality of the situation in Northern Ireland is that very, very few men that were involved in the UDR, in the regular army, in the RUC, were involved in any terrorism whatsoever. And of course, there's always this slander that there was constant collusion. It's just not the case. In fact, there was probably more collusion between the IRA and the British undercover forces than there was between anybody on the loyalist side, if the truth be known. But so these men were just ordinary people, ordinary soldiers, just like any soldier that would join any British Army regiment. And again, when we look at this and we look at the tempo of what was happening in Northern Ireland, people talk about civil war in England. This is something for all the civil warmongers out there. Nobody has any idea of the stress and the terror that the people of Northern Ireland went through because of a few hundred terrorists that were causing absolute mayhem. If things kicked off in England between, let's just say, Islamists and the rest of the population, it would be an absolute catastrophe for the country. And that's why what we need in the next government is a very strong. The biggest threat is going to be going forward is political Islam, and when political Islam isn't getting what it wants, violent Islamism, jihadism, right? That's going to be the biggest threats to the UK internal security going forward, without a shadow of a doubt. And then, of course, there will be a reaction from the far right or whatever you want to call it. That's what people like David Betts are talking about. They're not saying it in explicit terms because they know they'll get cancelled if there is explicit and saying, look, the real problem is Islamism, jihadism, and everything that's basically coming from that. Everybody, the dogs in the street know it. David Betts knows it, and he does allude to it, to be fair to him, but he doesn't say it in explicit terms. That's what we're facing, and that's why the next government, whatever makeup that government is, needs to clamp down on Islamism and Islamists. And again, what this Legacy Act and the way that stuff has happened in Northern Ireland will frame any conflict that happens in GB with Islamic terrorism. And we've had Islamic terrorism, but the tempo, if you could understand the tempo of what was happening in Northern Ireland in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, every single day there were lulls. There were times when it went very, very quiet. But when I was over in 87, 88, the IRA just got a massive shipment of arms. The tempo of attacks was very, very high. And the tempo of counterattacks by the special forces and the work done by undercover units was also very high. And were there some mistakes made? I'm sure there were, but they certainly weren't murder. So anyway, so that gives you a context of what we were looking at, of what the threat was. I'm going to play something by a DUP politician that I think was said in the local assembly.
That night, a stone Cairn lorry drove into the centre of Killearn and fired at close range 30 rounds of armour-piercing tracer ammunition into the station. The heavy machine gun was mounted on the back of the stolen lorry. The SS were faced with a heavily armed terrorist gang, approximately 10, and had to act decisively to neutralise the threat. These 4 terrorists had an alternative that night, but they went out with the intent of taking life and destroying property. Make no mistake, that was their intent. They could have been at home with their family, like most people do, with their loved ones. They could have been out socialising. They could have been working. But they made the choice. They made the choice. They took the alternative choice to try and commit murder. If you engage in a so-called war, be prepared for bullets coming back at you. Wars are wrong, but bullets will come back. These people were not out collecting for the Red Cross. They were out to commit murder.
And that's a very important point. And I want to address this as well, because, again, I know there's a lot of Irish people that are friends of mine that I know and love all over the UK, all over Ireland, that do not support the IRA and do not support the Republican movement. And I think that's got to be said very, very clearly. I love Irish people, whether they're Irish people in Northern Ireland or Irish people in the Republic of Ireland. I have, this isn't about good Irish people. This is about what was happening at the time, which was a dreadful, grubby terrorist campaign, which should never have happened, and now has been justified and deified by the left and by Republicans. And obviously this legislation is going to, even if they never get a prosecution, this legislation is going to embed the problem. I'm going to read some bits and pieces about what the key concerns are of veterans, SAS soldiers, and some of these generals that have been writing this letter. First of all, risk of prosecution. The primary concern is that soldiers who acted under lawful orders in a conflict situation could face prosecution or reinvestigation decades after the event, often in their old age. Some of those lads, I mean, I'm 57 now. I was 18 when I was serving in Northern Ireland. SAS men that were serving in the 80s would probably be in their late 20s, some of them in their early 30s. That's just the sort of age bracket of SAS men. They've had a career as regular soldiers. They've gone, I want to be, the best of the best. They go and do selection when they're 25, 26. They're probably getting on, I would guess the average age of an SAS man serving in Northern Ireland at that time would have been late 20s, early 30s. So if you're taking someone that was serving in 1984, 1985, or up until 1990, do the maths. They're going to be in their 60s, some of them in their 70s, and they're getting knocks on the door by the police. And the police, shameful. If I was a police officer, I would have to resign, and I've resigned for jobs over principle. So don't think I'm saying something that I haven't done. Right? If I was a police officer being asked to go and knock the door of an SAS veteran who'd been involved in taking out evil, wicked terrorists in Northern Ireland, I'd refuse to do it. But thankfully, I'm not a policeman, so I don't have to worry about that. Two-tier justice. Many veterans feel that while convicted terrorists were released from prison early as part of the Good Friday Agreement, and some received letters of comfort that effectively provided immunity, former military personnel didn't get letters of comfort, and they face ongoing legal scrutiny. this is unjust, it's morally incoherent, and it equates the actions of those upholding the peace, upholding the law, and acting within the law at the time, acting within what was given to us. We were all given a yellow card which had rules of engagement. Basically, it's equating what we did with what terrorists were doing, and you can't, as you've seen from those barbarous murders that I showed, cowardly murders, and they were cowards. It's very, listen, doesn't make you a hard man to go and shoot someone 6 times in the back of the head. What makes you a hard man is, I'll show you a video by Robin Horsfall, is what the soldiers did. When you got fired at, you ran towards the fire so that you could try and capture or kill that terrorist. That was the whole point. Again, lawfare, endless investigations. Veterans fear being subjected to a conveyor belt of investigations, civil claims and inquests, even if previous inquiries found no case to answer. The other thing is, this is going to cost the taxpayer a huge amount of money. Millions upon millions of pounds is going to be spent on any cases that get dragged through the courts, because the MOD has to, they have a duty of care to pay the legal fees of the soldiers that are getting dragged back into court and getting persecuted. And I remember when I was in Belfast, there was shortly after I finished my tour, there was a parachute regiment guy called Lee Clegg. I think it was Lee Clegg, shot a car full of joyriders, got prosecuted, went to prison, got released. I'm not sure whether on appeal. But his life was destroyed by that. And the joyriders, just before he shot that car, the joyriders had killed a parachute regiment soldier in the very area where he opened fire. But of course, that isn't taken into consideration. Okay. Betrayal and lack of trust. Many veterans feel the government is tone deaf to their concerns, that the new bill is a betrayal of their service to the country. A letter from 9 former senior generals warned that this approach risks national security and could negatively impact recruitment and retention in the armed forces, specifically in special forces units. Why would you go and serve in the most elite regiments in the world? You know, people talk about Delta Force and Navy SEALs. Those Delta Force and Navy SEALs guys grudgingly admit that the SAS do exactly what they do and more with less equipment and less resources. And that's why the British Special Forces are so loved around the world. And I've had the pleasure of knowing guys that have served in special units, of knowing guys that have done selection and passed selection. I never did it when I was in the military. Again, you know, that's another story. But the reality is that the guys that did actually have the balls to go and do selection and pass selection, they deserve the respect and veneration of every single soldier, but every single civilian as well. Because I think any man that puts on a uniform and goes and serves his country to protect and defend his country deserves a massive amount of respect and a massive amount of kudos. And to me, it makes men men. But guys that went that extra step and actually did selection and succeeded at selection, they're on a different level. They're on a completely different level. And for them to be prosecuted is not just an affront to them, it's an affront to every single veteran that has ever served in the military. So anyway, and again, the last one is the focus on state actors. The perception has been put forward that the only people that killed anyone in the Troubles were British soldiers. And it's a complete inversion of the truth. It's a perverse inversion of the truth. And this Labour government, Ben, Starmer, Harmer, you know, whatever they are, these people are called, these traitors, this traitor government is betraying the British Army, and it's betraying every single soldier that served in Northern Ireland, every single civilian that died, every single person that died at the hands of the IRA. Their memory is being betrayed by this legislation. And look, I am in no way excusing any bad behavior by anyone. And in war, do people behave badly? Yes, of course they do from time to time. They're bound to. But from what I can see from these cases, that, again, with my limited knowledge, everything that those soldiers did, they were acting under orders that came from the very highest level of the British government. And remember, it was a Labour government that first sent the SAS into Northern Ireland. It was Merlin Rees who first deployed the Special Air Service to Northern Ireland in 1976. Obviously, they were probably working there beforehand unofficially, but it was him that officially sent them there. Okay, guys. The majority of armed forces and police are woke now. I'm not sure they would be able to defend us anyway. I don't think the soldiers on the ground are. I think the higher level are. Yeah. Okay. 3 young Scottish soldiers were at a bar. A young girl approached them, inviting them back to the house. They thought they got lucky. Yes, there were. That happened in 1970, early 1970s. Can't remember. I think it was 71 or 72. One of them was. I mean, one of them was 17. One of those kids was 17, and that happened. That didn't just happen once. That happened time and time and time again. People were caught in honey traps. People were lured to places where they were ambushed. It was horrific. Bodies were found on border roads, people that had been working for the security forces. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. People don't understand. Do you know what? Absolutely. Let's not forget the Omagh bombing. Let's not forget T-Ban. Let's not forget the Ballygawley bus bombing. There's so many atrocities that happened. Yet, when the IRA go out on these so-called operations and get killed, I'm going to play you a couple of bits of footage now from when the security forces responded to the carnage that the IRA were pushing on our people. In fact, no, I'm going to play this by Robin Horsfall. Robin's
some of the most amazing young leaders that you could ever want. Your big brothers, your corporals. You're the biggest, baddest guys in the team. You know, you're the people on the street that everybody wants to keep away from, and you've got guns and you've got discipline. I remember one particular occasion where one of my corporals, Varian Isaacs, we got shot at. It was just one shot, went over our heads through some Wrigley tin on the side of us. Before I could even look, he was running straight at the sound of the gunfire. And of course, we were a four-man patrol, and we were running behind him, and there was no hesitation on his part. It was just bang. Well, he went straight at it. You know, we didn't get anything on that particular occasion, but that was the leadership. That was the type of guys that were showing me how to behave when I was 18.
And again, that story by Robin. As far I spoke to Robin about that. I did a podcast with Robin probably about 5 years ago. And Robin's a great guy, good friend of mine, and obviously he was involved in the Iranian embassy siege. He was one of the men that stormed the Iranian embassy as an SAS soldier. He served in Northern Ireland in the, I think, 76, 77, somewhere around that, with the parachute regiment. And that incident he's talking about happened in Ballymurphy, and it was almost exactly the same as an incident that happened to us in Ballymurphy, except with us it was a bomb attack, but very, very similar. And you know, those areas were very, very dangerous areas for soldiers to operate in. But soldiers operated in those areas fearlessly. Many soldiers were killed. Many soldiers were injured very, very seriously. And people have got to understand that. They've got to understand what was happening. So I'm going to play this video of what happened in Loughgall, okay? Because Loughgall keeps coming back time and time again.
The tiny village of Loughgall, with its devastated police station, was sealed off today as forensic officers picked their way carefully through the debris.
So what you see there is the van that the terrorists. There was, I think there was 8 terrorists killed in the ambush and one civilian. The terrorists came in that van and also in a digger, a JCB, with a massive bomb in the bucket, which was driven into the police station. You see from the footage, these guys were going there with absolute intent of mass murder in Loughgall, and they've been attacking different police stations. This unit had been attacking different police stations around Northern Ireland. I think it was the East Tyrone Brigade that were doing this, if memory serves me right, and they drove straight into an SAS ambush. Now the bomb exploded, and people say, "Well, why weren't they arrested?" The attack had already been initiated when the SAS opened fire. So the SAS didn't open fire until they were fired upon. The firefight went on for 10 minutes. I was on an OP, an observation post in South Armagh, and we heard the contact reports coming in. Obviously, we weren't involved in it. We were doing something totally different. But so we heard this happening as it happened, or just shortly after it happened. And of course, when we heard the casualty numbers, we didn't know whether they were friendly or from the IRA side, but thankfully they were from the IRA side.
Of last night's battle. It's clear that when the mechanical digger carrying a bomb in the shovel drove up to the station escorted by a van containing 6 armed men, they had driven straight into a security forces ambush.
Those sort of, I don't know what they are, obviously something that forensics have done, that they're just going through the bullet holes that went. So if you look at the amount of bullet holes that hit that van, I mean, it was a very, very fierce firefight. And the shooting was going both ways.
Spokesman would not confirm today that it was engineered by the SAS. But the IRA unit was hit by fire from a wide semicircle of soldiers spread around the police station. The clear inference was that they were acting on intelligence information. The gun battle lasted nearly 10 minutes, and when the bomb exploded, wrecking the empty police station, windows were shattered 200 yards away, including those of a church hall where parents and children were gathering for a social event. At the end, 8 IRA men and 1 passerby lay dead, and another civilian was injured. The IRA men were dressed in balaclavas, boiler suits and heavy boots. The array of weapons and ammunition...
Now just look at those weapons there. Shotguns, pistols, high-velocity rifles. That is not guys that are just out for a picnic. They were going there intent on a massacre. They were going there intent on mass murder. That's what they were doing. That's what they were doing.
Recovered from the dead men was today put on display by the RUC. The weapons included semi-automatic machine guns and 2 Belgian FN rifles. The IRA have attacked 22 police stations since the beginning of the year. That they paid so disastrously for this latest attempt is not a matter for lament in the village that gave birth to the Loyalist Orange Order nearly 200 years ago.
And again, I'll be honest with you, from the point of view of the military, being absolutely brutally honest, from the point of view of the military, we saw that as a massive success. And we celebrated, because we knew that those monstrous, evil terrorists being taken out was going to save civilian lives and security force lives. And I have never shed a tear for those men that were killed in what they would have considered a battle. And when they went out there, they would have known exactly the risks that they were taking when they went out there to kill and maim and injure. Many of them were serial killers. Many of them had blood on their hands. Many of them had assassinated innocent members of the security forces, innocent members of the loyalist community, innocent Republicans, innocent nationalists, innocent Catholics. The IRA, we must remember this, the IRA killed more Catholics than the security forces did. We must remember that. We must never forget that. Yes, the Birmingham pub bombings. Linda was talking about Omagh. Trouble is, people under 40, 50 will not know what... This is the problem. Now, most people, I'm guessing, that follow my channel are about the same age as me. Okay? So we understand. We all get it. We even lived through the bomb scares in England and the bombing campaigns in England. And again, people go on about Islamist terrorism. Islamist terrorism is not even anywhere near on the tempo or the scale of what the IRA were doing in the 70s and 80s until they got the wings clipped by things like Loch Gore. And these were the operations that brought the Troubles to the end, to an end. It wasn't the peace process. It wasn't the IRA suddenly deciding it was a bad idea to murder people. It was them realizing they couldn't win. They couldn't get a strategic win. So they went for a different method. It was war by a different method. And now the war is by propaganda. And that's why we've got to win the battle of truth. We've got to win the battle of truth against their propaganda. And yes, the Omagh bombing, I remember I was working, I used to have a double glazing business at the time. I was working on a conservatory that we're building. And I remember that very well. Yeah. Yes, there is a lot of talk about Islamists hiding their weapons in the mosque. Hello, Sue from Telford. Well, Sue, I spent a lot of time in Telford working on the Rape of Britain films with Tommy. I basically put the team together that did that. So I I know Telford very well, and actually, when I was in the military, when I was in, you know, I did a little experiment on one of the Chat GPT, I think it was, and it says, what are the chances of surviving 3 terrorist attacks? And the chances are something about 0.03% that you've survived 3 terrorist attacks. And I survived 2 in Northern Ireland, and then when I got to England, the army barracks I was in got blown to bits by the IRA as well. Luckily, I was in Marry quarters just outside the camp, but nobody was killed. It was a miracle that nobody was killed, but that's another story for another podcast. But yeah, so I think that the situation that we're facing now with these soldiers, these brave soldiers, I want to show you some footage from one of the funerals, just to show you exactly what was going on. Now, this was in the Republic of Ireland. Okay, so this shows you the fanaticism of the people that attacked the Loughgall police station.
James Liner arrived at Emmyville. The procession stopped.
James Liner was the IRA leader of that unit.
And men in full paramilitary uniform stepped forward. The Garda seemed to be outnumbered as 3 IRA gunmen appeared.
Go! 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 Go!
As the gunmen made off, members of the Garda Special Task Force moved in to arrest them, but the crowd surrounded them. A Garda car was overturned, and a plainclothes officer fired shots in the air.
So that was an IRA funeral in the Republic of Ireland, and you've seen what happened at the other IRA funeral that we focused on. I'm going to play this last piece, which shows Martin McGuinness, and Martin McGuinness was a serial killer and probably a state informant as well, almost certainly a state informant. But let's just play this.
The shooting was in a field overlooking the fountains.
So again, this is another SAS operation against a heavily armed IRA unit, and three terrorists were killed in this one. I think this was in Strabane.
Street housing estate. The police say an army patrol in uniform came across 3 men. They opened fire, killing all 3. The police say 2 grenade launchers and 3 rifles were found at the scene, but it's understood that none of these weapons were fired by the IRA men. This incident will be seen by many as yet another crippling blow for the IRA, but it's also brought controversy. Controversy about the fact that the army shot dead the 3 IRA men instead of arresting them, as many people think should have happened.
There was a young boy shouting. I don't know if it was 1 or 2, but I did hear there was somebody shouting, "Don't shoot," and "Don't shoot me." And then there was another burst of fire.
I'm horrified at the shooting. The fact that 3 youngster bandmen have been murdered by the British Army. Reports from local people suggest that at least one of the men had surrendered and was here.
I mean, there's a lot of irony in this when McGuinness saying he was horrified at the shooting. He's almost certainly involved in the murder of a man called Hegarty from Londonderry who was working for the state and basically was told he could come safely back to Northern Ireland by McGuinness through a family connection, and when he got back to Northern Ireland, he was murdered by the IRA, and that was, if not done at the actual hand of McGuinness, some people believe it was that he was shot by McGuinness. McGuinness was certainly the one that was calling the shots. Martin McGuinness was a serial killer. We've got to understand that many of these men were serial killers, and of course, we all had the very cuddly, photographs of Martin McGuinness sitting with Ian Paisley. After the Troubles had come to an end. But let's be under no illusion. He was a hardline Irish Republican who carried out many, many murders and also is believed to have been a state informant for many, many years as well. So what I want to do this morning is slay the myth of glamorous Irish republicanism. Okay? It's a myth. It's a lie. It didn't exist. It didn't exist. Angus, that's a very good description of this. psychopaths with a cause. Now, listen, I know even doing this now is not without risk for me in Northern Ireland, but I don't care, because the truth has to be told and the truth has to get out there. It's the same as what I do when I'm talking about Islam and Islamism. I don't care. I know there's a cost, but I'm willing to pay the price for the truth. It's as simple as that. So people can say what they want. Yeah, Claire, I think the answer to your question might be a no. They all got out of jail free cards, even on the run. Well, actually, if you look at the just going to the Michael Stone thing, what happened with the Michael Stone killing? There was a policy that had been negotiated between the RUC and Sinn Féin, that it was after Lawrence Marley's funeral, and another couple of funerals that had turned into absolute farces almost, where the police were trying to police them, and Republicans were fighting literally over the bodies of their dead. And what happened was the police allowed the IRA and Sinn Féin to steward and marshal their own events. So that's how Stone managed to get in there, because it was been marshaled by Sinn Féin and the IRA instead of by the police. If the police had been there, Stone would not have been able to do that. So you're right on that, but it wasn't that the RUC allowed Stone to enter the cemetery. Stone was at the funeral, sitting behind Martin McGuinness and Gerry Adams, deciding whether to shoot them or not. And then after the service, and when the burial was happening, that's when he launched his attack. But he was able to do that because Sinn Féin had negotiated with the RUC not to have security force members at that funeral, and that's why he was able to do. If the security force had been there, it would never have happened. So it was actually down to Sinn Féin not wanting the security forces at those events. I taught my children English history, and now my grandchildren, they know nothing about Ireland or what really happened on mainland UK. And again, you know, nobody can know everything, but that's the whole point of doing what I'm doing, is to educate people, say this is what it's about. Not sure where it's due to go in this. This is where Bob Speaker's Corner and the Paper Straight and Tenconi need to watch. We need the true gospel, not state religion. Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely agree with that, 100%. So anyway, this is the reason I'm doing this. Is this legislation has just passed Parliament? Okay, that's why I'm focusing on Northern Ireland. That's why I'm spending the whole of this time on Northern Ireland. What I'm going to do, I'm going to play the Men of England song soon. But what I'm trying to show is the brutality of what was going on, and it's very, very easy for limp-wristed, treacherous politicians to throw our soldiers under the bus. And I'm not just going to sit there silently while soldiers that I served with get thrown under the bus. I have friends that were involved at a very high level in the undercover war, in the conflict, whether they were in the police back in the day or whether they were in the military. And I know what they did, and I know the risks that they took, and I know the bravery and the professionalism that they showed. So I'm not going to have lefty lawyers, traitors, people like Starmer and Harmer and Blair and Jonathan Powell, all those treacherous scum that kowtowed and surrendered to the IRA, gave them letters of comfort, let them off the hook, and sit back and allow my colleagues and my fellow soldiers to be demonized by these scumbags on all sides. And I'm talking about the scumbags in Sinn Féin IRA, the scumbags in the British government. And people might say, well, it happened a long time ago. Yes, it happened a long time ago. It has a direct effect now on military morale, military recruitment, and also how terrorists will plot to attack our state. So it is a threat to national security. Okay. Anyway, guys, I'm going to finish there on the Irish stuff, because it does get me wound up, and too many people died, and yeah. Okay, guys, let's have a bit of let's play the Men of England just to lighten the tone, because again, I do get very, very angry about all this stuff, this sort of stuff. Let's play the Men of England. Let's play something a little more upbeat. And again, it's not easy to do all this stuff. It's not easy to talk about all this stuff. It is probably quite dangerous to talk about this stuff, to be brutally honest with you. but it has to be talked about. We have to realize what we're up against. And again, to me, the battle we're facing now is, again, it's a battle of ideas. In fact, actually, what I'm going to do, I'll play the Men of England first.
Those heroes brave and bold, where are the men who bled and died in foreign wars untold? The men who conquered all and stood for faith and love, the men who looked to guidance from the Father up above. Where are the men of England, the heroes brave and bold, the men who stood for faith and truth, whose honor wasn't sold? When rape had so depraved, took the daughters of our nation, who forever they enslaved. What of the men of England that looked the other way? They took the country shilling, they never made their play. Where are the men of England, the heroes brave and bold, the men who stood for faith and truth, whose honor wasn't sold? Police and vice squad, they all seem quite amused, as at the hands of rape gangs our daughters were abused. The politicians blame the lads who stood up one and all, but most of all blame Tommy, who always took the fall. Where are the men of England, the heroes brave and bold, the men who stood for faith and truth, whose honor wasn't sold? For now we all must stand. The future of our children is still within your hand. The future not yet written for this green and pleasant land. Truth, whose honor wasn't sold. Where are you, men of England? For now we all must stand. The future of our children is still within your hand. The future not yet written for this green and pleasant land.
This morning, my friends, I asked a question. This morning.
Well, guys, again, thanks everyone for indulging me on that this morning. I think from time to time it's worth, even though it's early in the morning, and you know there was loads of other stuff I was going to do. I was going to do a weather report. I was going to do all sorts of stuff that you normally get on breakfast, sort of television type stuff. But what we're doing here is a bit different. And again, Essex Laser, I think it is. What is it? Where am I? Laser Essex News. Yeah, and I get where you're coming from. I think from my point of view, there's different things. There's a lot of different things going on here. There's a lot of different dynamics in play in what's happening in our movement at the minute. Now, again, my whole take on what's happening is very, very simple. I think I'll probably play us out on Tommy's. I'll play us out on Tommy talking about joining Advance, I think, because we've got the politics thing, okay? And when you look at what I've just showed you this morning, that horror there that I showed you, when we look at what we're looking at and what we're facing, I was watching Mozam Beg, who he's part of Cage. He's a very infamous Islamist. He's thought to have worked for, I think, MI5. Again, that was an allegation. Who knows? But he was in Leicester chanting death, death to the IDF, which means death to any Jew. Everyone knows what that means. We all know what it means. If you're Jewish and you're Israeli, if you're living in England, you served in the IDF, they want you. You know, these people want you dead. Let's just be totally honest about that. So we are facing a very, very real existential threat from Islamism. And the reason I showed you what happened in Northern Ireland in the 80s, these things all happened around the time I was serving, and certainly the time I was living in Northern Ireland. Some dreadful, dreadful things. And they scarred the whole of our country. And most people of my age that were involved in the conflict on all sides, and I don't in any way disparage people that have suffered from the Republican side, Loyalist side, British Army side, police side. There was 4 or 5 sides to this conflict, and probably more. But I don't in any way disparage what anybody went through, and the PTSD and the trauma that people are still suffering from right now as a result of what they saw, and even as a result of just living every day of your life under threat, which is what we did when we were ex-soldiers. If you were I suppose a paramilitary, an ex-soldier, a policeman, and you know, you were a target. You were a target of the other side, and you could have been killed at any time. And I don't want that for England and Scotland and Wales, and I don't want it spreading to Ireland either, from because of migration and because of a mass huge numbers of jihadists and Islamist terrorists and Islamists coming to our country. That's the big threat to me now. I don't see that the IRA could restart a campaign. They would if they thought it was beneficial to them and they thought they could get away with it. That's for sure. But I don't think they will do it, and I don't think they can sustain it. But the bigger threat is Islamism right the way through these islands. And that's what we need to stand up against. So we need to get Advance into power, because Advance will formulate policies that will deal with these issues, and will also protect the union. But we also need to, like I think Essex Laser was saying. I haven't fully read your comments there, mate. I'll try and check them back later. I think what you're saying is that the Christian nationalism side of things is problematic, and I would agree with that to a certain extent. I would agree with that to a certain extent, if that's what you're saying. I believe Christianity is the overall key to all this, right? And I believe that people getting saved, if all the Muslims got saved tomorrow, and all the atheists got saved tomorrow, and all the Islamists and the communists became genuine Bible believing, Christ loving Christians, the problem would be solved tomorrow. Can that happen? Yes, it can, because God can do anything. Will it happen? Well, we don't know, but we can pray for it. So that's the other thing about this, that we can seek God with all our hearts, and I think that's more important than the political side of things. It's more important than any military solution to any problems that the country faces. The biggest thing that will change our country and save our country is the gospel and people coming to Christ. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't be fully engaged with politics, and we shouldn't look at look at what happened. I'm going to just read this message, guys. If you want to support me, there's links in the chat below. I'm like Fastjet Performance. He's always saying the same. People like me that speak our minds, we get zero traction from YouTube. YouTube's never going to do us any favors. It's never going to pump us up to the top of the charts. We're never going to get hundreds of thousands of people watching our videos, because we tell the truth. And as much as the free media space talks about, we're the alternative media, we're telling the truth. Well, okay, maybe. But YouTube can clip your wings at any time, So if you want to support me, there's links in the description of this video below, and it would be greatly appreciated. Okay, Gary Smith. I've lived a sheltered life, Richard. I'm 60. I don't know half of all this. All I do know is we love to persecute the brave people who stick themselves in front of danger for others. Isn't that right? Whether it's Tommy, whether it's Katie, or any of the rest of us that have had stuff happened to us, we've been cancelled, we've had our businesses ruined, we've had our jobs ruined, we've lost jobs over the head of this, lost our financial security, lost everything to a great extent. And you're absolutely right, Gary. And I do appreciate that. Thank you very much for that. That's very, very encouraging. Go to Richard's Counter Media channel if you like help us. Yeah. Please do subscribe. And again, Claire and Bess and Farty Pants and Matt, thanks for everything that you're doing in modding and helping me with these channels. It's massively, massively appreciated. You've no idea how massively appreciated it is. No, I mean, well, this is another thing. Mahmoud's, and I mentioned this in passing when I first looked at this, when I saw the countries that she was banning: Angola, Namibia, and what was the other one? DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. Those 3 are Christian nations. Apparently 6 people have come from those nations on the small boats. So it's just, they're just moving deck chairs on the Titanic, and they're deliberately gaslighting everybody. We need Advance to be in Parliament. We need a Christian revival. We need a strong military. We need a strong police force. We need people, everybody in this country. If you live in this country, whatever religious background you're from, you need to be proud of this country, and you need to be supporting this country. You need to be patriotic, okay? Because this country has given everybody, all of us have got so much from this country, whether it's through healthcare, whether it's through opportunities, and it's been flushed down the toilet by those scumbags in Parliament. And to me, they have to go. They absolutely have to go. Right, I'm going to play us out on Tommy talking about Advance, I think, guys, yeah? Because I think this video is really, really important that people really get that. Let me just find it, guys. Bear with me. It's going to be okay. No worries. Let's have a look. So yesterday it was nuclear war. Today it was Northern Ireland. Oh, by the way, Mike Graham is going to be doing. Mike Graham is going to be doing a morning show. Don't any of you dare go across to Mike Graham, because listen, we all know what Mike Graham thinks of Tommy. He had a chance to repent of his sins yesterday, and he didn't. So when Mike Graham does his show, don't be going after Mike Graham and sloping off to follow Mike Graham. So
our video about Advance UK, make a few things clear. I want to let people know why I joined, but also to make it clear, it's not my party.
Debbie, thanks for that, and good morning to you as well. That's massively appreciated. Thanks, Debbie.
Okay, I'm not running it. I don't want to be involved in party politics, if I'm honest. I'm just a member amongst tens of thousands of others. Why did I join? I joined because of everything I saw with Ben Habib. Everything he says is exactly what this country needs. He stands for the United Kingdom, for British values, for British people, and he won't bend the knee to the establishment. He knows what a border is, and he knows what freedom means, and he knows what a woman is. And I joined because I know several other people at the heart of Advance UK. People who have helped and supported me for years behind the scenes are in the heart and the inner circle of Advance UK. I wholeheartedly trust them. I don't trust many people, I trust them. So I'll ask you now, okay? Please sign up for Advance UK. You can do so at the link I'm putting here. We all need, as a movement, I've been saying it for years, we need a political home, a political voice for our movement. Of course, in the last election, we end up with Labour and a cabinet full of clowns. Everyone knows they're not for the working people. They're lining their own pockets and destroying our country faster than Karl Marx could have ever imagined. People have had enough. Look at what's happening now. Look at the revolution that's brewing across Britain. Even look at Raise the Flags campaign. Labour are finished. Keir Starmer is finished. They know it. They've lost a big chunk of the Muslim vote in the last election because they weren't marching often enough for Hamas. And they'll lose many more as people join Hezbollah, Corbyn's new Islamophilia party. And that's why the Labour Party wants 16-year-olds to be able to vote. It's going to backfire on them. The youth always rebel. Young people are smarter than Labour think. And as for reform, I've got to go there. Well, they were the only option for the last election, but they aren't who people think they are. Reform tells us Britain can take more immigrants. Net zero is their immigration policy. Net zero was their immigration policy, okay? That meant last year 500,000 British people left. They could, and their policy was to take 500,000 immigrants in. From where? Afghanistan, Somalia, Iraq, Iran, who knows where? They tell us we can't deport people entering the country illegally.
We're talking about hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants are in Britain at the moment. Do you support deporting all of those people?
It's impossible to do. Literally impossible to do. For us, at the moment, it's a political impossibility.
But is it your ambition?
No. So it's pointless even going there.
Or did he change his position on that? Flip-flop Farage keeps changing his position. It's hard to keep up. They tell us we can't alienate Muslims because of the growing Muslim demographic. By 2050, they'll be superior to us. That's not objective, Nigel. Just stand up and be proud of Britain and stand up for British values. That's what we need to do.
We have a Muslim population in Britain growing by about 75% every 10 years. Right? That's just where we are.
Mm-hmm.
If we politically alienate the whole of Islam, we will lose.
We need to prevent the Islamic demographic getting to that point. They also say, Nigel's words, there'll be more left-wing than the Tories by the next general election. They're okay with trans women, men, in women's prisons. And they're okay with digital ID. And that really is the end of our freedom.
What do you feel about ID cards, digital ID cards? Is that something that Reform UK would support?
Well, look, I personally don't have a problem with an ID card. You know, I don't see what the issue is. We can all be tracked now if somebody wants to track us.
And we're all discarded as that lot. That's what annoys me. Our entire movement, that lot. We don't want anything to do with that lot.
Tommy Robinson, people have been protesting in his name. What do you make of Tommy Robinson? Is he a good guy in your eyes?
Right, okay, guys. You all get the picture. You all know exactly where I'm coming from. Do me a favor. Let's try and build this up. Again, listen, thanks very much for that, Jenny. Massively appreciated. Truth is like the sun. You can shut it out for a time, but it ain't going to go away. Love that. Brilliant, Jenny. Thanks so much for that. And guys, I'm going to shoot off here because I've got to do the school run with the grandkids. So hopefully everybody knows a bit more about Northern Ireland than they did before this stream started. It's like I say, it's what formed me as a young man, as a young soldier, and many others young soldiers of my generation. That was our war. That's what we did. And we've got the scars, mental and physical, not necessarily physical, but mental and physical, some of us to prove it. So yeah. Thanks for the support, guys, and I'll see everybody tomorrow, 7 o'clock. And tomorrow we're going to do something really positive because we had nuclear war on Monday. No, nuclear war on Tuesday. Northern Ireland during the Troubles on Wednesday. So tomorrow, I promise, unless something catastrophic happens in the next 24 hours, we're going to have a really, really positive show tomorrow. And we'll maybe talk about the event that Tommy's got planned for early December, which is going to be great because it's going to be Christian, it's going to be Christmassy. It's about putting Christ back into Christmas. It's a protest to put Christ back into Christmas, but it's not. It's going to be a lot more than a protest. Right, guys, see you all soon. God bless.